Hello, and welcome to a new edition of Need to Know, a series of video interviews with companies who are shaping, creating, and innovating in the games industry today, and whose work will have a huge impact going forwards into the future. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Naomi Korn, CEO of Naomi Korn Associates, here to talk to us today about something as seemingly so trivial as digital chickens, and how this can underscore the broader significance of copyright in protecting creative expression. Before we get going, Naomi, it's lovely to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Um, would you like to tell our viewers a little bit about your background and what it is
Of
that you do at
course.
Naomi Korn Associates?
Of course. Thanks, Leo. Yeah, we're a company that specializes in copyright and data protection for the creative industries, including cultural heritage organizations, creators. We do work with um, software companies and charities. We have a sort of broad coverage, and we've been around for quite a long time now. We've been around for over 20 years, and I think what um, stands us apart from other organizations that do copyright or data protection is that we're not lawyers, we're the good guys, we're the people that help creative people to do the things they want to do to achieve their potential whilst complying with the legislative framework. So myself and my team mainly come from the creative industries. And in fact, my background is I originally trained as an archaeologist and I specialized in prehistoric art and I sort of moved into copyright from that space. And so we understand what it means to be creators, and we understand what it means to be part of the creative industry and having to navigate what's a bit like a snakes and ladders board in terms of legal compliance. You can achieve the dizzy heights by climbing up those ladders, but you can easily go down a snake if you take a wrong turn or you don't do the right thing in terms of the law. So we've always prided ourselves as a company in a lot of hand-holding and confidence boosting and skills development through whether it's our consultancy or our training courses. We've got an online training academy, for example, with lots and lots of different courses, lots of different stages of learning, and just being there to help people, being the people that, you can pick up the phone and say, hey, Naomi, or hey, Sean, or hey, Jess, I've got this issue or this problem. Can you help me? What do I need to do? So that's kind of who we are and what we do. And we're really excited to be now part of the Ukie family.
It's very wonderful to have you, Naomi. It really is. I'm sure you can bring an awful lot of value to our members as well. Naomi, so from the outset, we were going to talk about digital chickens. I recently read a little article that you put up on your website. Do you want to talk to us about digital chickens today, then?
Course. So yeah, there's a bit of a story here. So um, my oldest son has a flock of chickens. Okay, so that's the starting point for this. In fact, when I was a kid, my family kept chickens in the depths of London, and so um, I was looking at some photographs of his chickens that we'd taken over Christmas. He'd made this amazing Christmas cake for his chickens, made of sort of seeds and all the things they like, and they were sort of flocked around it. And I was then sort of mulling over actually this interview that you and I are doing right now, Leo, and thinking, okay, well, what would be interesting to talk about, and what can I talk about that is actually part of not just the work we do, but sort of, we're not separate people when we're at work. We bring everything, or this is how I operate, everything who I am into the workplace. So that, okay, well, wouldn't it be brilliant if I could write an article about kind of copyright and chickens? And then I started sort of mulling that over. And actually, as it turns out, both my sons are massive game players, right? So you name it, they've played it. My oldest son, who's got the chickens, he plays Roblox and Minecraft. He builds stuff, builds animals. And then my youngest son is all about sort of Assassin's Creed and all these sort of, Harry Potter games and Star Wars games. So it's always that's what they do to relax. I thought, digital chickens. I've seen digital chickens in Minecraft, and my son, is kind of experimenting, building them all the time. And I thought, right, that's it. That's what I want to write this article about because I understand that. And so I started thinking about, okay, well, what are the copyright issues when you're thinking about digital chickens? And that's really where the article evolved from. Thinking about the practicalities, thinking about these digital chickens don't just arise. Someone makes them, someone builds them, someone creates them. In fact, it was also the idea kind of, I guess, took life, became something as well, because I remember at your brilliant Christmas party that I went to, where I first of all, well, met you, Leo, in person and met some of your fabulous members. And I had some great chats with a number of your members, a number of software developers. And I met this guy and we were talking about that actually developing water features is a thing. Like I didn't realize this that it's a speciality. Someone will create water features, waterfalls, and just have this amazing ability to create. And I thought, well, that will be the same with digital chickens. Someone would have created those. They've not just been generated from nowhere. And then I thought, well, actually, in whether it's digital chickens or a painting or a drawing or waterfalls, the same copyright issues are going to arise. That someone's made them, that they're original works, and therefore, by all extensive purposes, they qualify as being protected by copyright. And so that's really, and we can talk more about that, but that's really where that idea came from. So it's lots of different elements from my work and from my life and watching things, and hence we get the digital chickens story.
All culminating together
Okay.
as it is fascinating. So going back to basics then. So
Yeah.
who technically owns the digital chickens themselves? What's the ownership there?
So there are a number of different elements here. So if the software and the coding that's being used to create the digital chickens is original, is unique, um, it will be the person who's created that digital chicken. However, there are other sorts of parts to this jigsaw puzzle that are worth just spending a couple of minutes on. If they are an employee, if they're being paid to do this as part of their job, um, the general rule is that anything created by employees, it's the employer that owns the copyright. And a lot of people ask me about this and they say, well, it's not written in my contract. Well, actually, it doesn't need to be because copyright laws have been around for a really long time, for over 300 years in the UK and some of the oldest copyright laws in the world. But actually, in the 1911 Copyright Act, so that's like over 100 years ago, for the first time, it was stipulated that it would be the employer who owns the copyright in works created by employees. Okay, so that's one factor to take into account. And then the next question I get asked, and this is relevant for digital chickens, is, well, okay, well, I'm not an employee. I'm a supplier, I'm a contractor. Someone's brought me in to do that. What then? Who owns the rights? Well, whilst the default would be that it's the person who created that digital chicken, we're going to talk about digital chickens so much today. Um, it will actually depend on what they've signed in the contract. So there can be all types of things that they can sign in a contract that relate to copyright. There could be assigning their copyright in that contract, which means that they don't own the copyright anymore. There may be a license in place, different types of flavors of licensing. There can be some that are really restricted, some that are quite generous. They can even be an assignment and a license they get back. So the answer is it depends on what they signed in their contract. So your answer, and we say this so much as copyright specialists, is it depends on the context, but there are certain rules, I guess, that you could follow. And certainly there's almost here for sort of young developers and people starting out, which is to be really careful about what you sign. If you get a big deal with someone, be really careful you don't sign away your rights and make sure that, the money isn't so enticing that you forget about the small print, right? Because that can actually be really damaging downstream. Think Taylor Swift, for example.
It's really, really interesting. And so these chickens themselves,
Yes.
in this context, that they are copyrightable, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, totally. And then, there's another dimension here, which is why I've been doing copyright now for so many years. I think this is now my 26th year doing copyright. And this is my second career. So I try not to feel too old, but 26 years doing copyright. And I'm still here because there is so many aspects and so much variability and so much to kind of get one's head around. Um, so the digital chicken, right? Let's go back to that. Um, there is another depend here because it depends on who's creating it as well. Because you can also have, for example, digital chickens created in play. I think that's the right terminology, isn't it? By players, right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
Minecraft, right? You can create your own digital chickens. Well, in that instance, um, all of it again goes back to the small prim because if you look at the small prim, when you become a player of a game, when you subscribe, whatever, almost certainly you have permissions to play the game, but almost certainly not will you get the copyright in what you create in game, right? It'll belong to the owners of Minecraft. I think that's Microsoft now. So so there is another aspect here, but the bottom line is that yes, there will be some kind of copyright, even if it's modifying an existing copyright. Right, so Minecraft would claim that they own the copyright in everything going on in Minecraft, and what you as a player have is a license in game to modify and create aspects and features, but that doesn't allow you, as I understand it, any permissions to use what you've created in any other platform. You'd have to get specific permission back from the owners of Minecraft.
Mm. No, that's interesting.
That, that
And
makes
so,
sense.
yeah, to a degree. I mean, obviously, there are, I suppose, there are chickens in Minecraft that you can't uh, modify yourself as a player, but you can obviously create designs in Minecraft as a player.
Right.
So you could create almost like a statue of a chicken.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
So yeah, carry on. Sorry.
Well, you can change the colors or sizes or features, right? So there'll be you can choose different, different aspects, but that doesn't give you copyright over them. All you're doing is you have a license in game to choose different features to create your own version. That doesn't give you any copyright over that. That will still be retained by the gaming company, right? So you've got different types, I think, of you've got you've got different types of elements here. You've got the creators of those chickens to start with, the game developers, and then you've got the players and what rights do they have? And actually, more often than not, very few rights at all. Does that make it clearer?
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, and so how does sort of licensing factor into this in terms of permissions then?
Right, so you have a license as a player to
Hmm.
play the game and do the things you want to do in game, but that's
Hmm.
pretty much it. So I've done some work, we've done some work with cultural heritage organisations that have well, Museum of London, for example. Several years ago they did I think they recreated using Minecraft. I think it was the Great Fire of London or something like that. And they needed a special license, right, from Minecraft
Hmm.
to do that. So that took elements of Minecraft out of the game environment. And that permission had to be specifically negotiated with Minecraft. Right. So the license you get as a player is in game. It's just in that environment. If you want to do
Mm.
anything else with that content, you have to get specific permission. So, if you want to create kind of, if you mo want to modify what you've done, if you want to, put it in a different space, almost certainly the license you have as a player, as a user of that software, will exclude you from doing that. So, the gaming industry like any of the creative industries, and this is why we're so excited to be working with you guys because it just mirrors so much of the experience we've had, is about contracts. And within contracts, terms and conditions and licenses, right? So any touch points or creation, those will need to be defined. And so also as a young game developer, starting down this route, having that knowledge beforehand, understanding that, you know, any sort of relationship you have with a software company, with a funder, with the players of your games, whoever, needs to be underpinned by robust agreements where you know exactly what's going on. That they all sort of, there's a synergy between the agreements that you make so that you don't inadvertently tie yourself down to one thing that excludes you doing something else. Or maybe you get this amazing pot of money to do something, but it comes with really restrictive parameters that then exclude you doing something else, right? So all of this becomes important. That's what we do. As a company, we help the creative industries, artists and museums and galleries, art centers that negotiate those spaces.
That's interesting. Okay. And from the sort of, I guess, the other side of things, what about sort of derivative works? What about fan art? Maybe even fan fiction? I don't know. How does that sort of slot into this? Out of
Well, we
curiosity.
do. Again, this is it. So copyright law is not absolute, right? It's one of the members of the intellectual property rights family that has a little bit of maneuverability. So whilst a registered trademark or a patent, we refer to those as monopoly rights. Like once you own them, no one can do anything with it in as far as the spaces you've registered it. Okay, so that's an oversimplification, I know, but just to try and differentiate. Copyright, because it's about protecting creative works and it's part of the legal compliance framework that recognizes you need a little bit of pivoting and balancing between, on the one hand, creators' rights, and on the other hand, sort of users. It's
Mm,
about trying to reflect, I guess, in essence, the International Convention of Human Rights, which is about, on the one hand, creators having the ability to benefit and to protect what they've created, and on the other hand, everyone's ability to access knowledge. And there's a lot here as well about how copyright laws interplay not just with the human rights legislation, but also specific components like freedom of expression and being part of a democracy. So where I'm getting to with this is that the copyright legislation contains something that we refer to as the exceptions to copyright. So these are especially carved out in the legislation, particularly in the 1988 Copyright Designs and Patents Act. That's the only quoting of the legislation I'll do, I promise. Um, whereby users can, for example, use other people's copyright works for non-commercial research and private study. There are certain education provisions and certain provisions that allow the custodians of works like museums, libraries, and archives to make preservation copies. Now, that all makes sense because, of course, if they couldn't make preservation copies, then we run the risk that pretty much everything that's on any type of media at some point will decompose or degrade. So, this is about safeguarding our cultural heritage. But there's another exception that's really there are well, at least another one exception, which are really, I think, important and relevant for sort of fan art and kind of homages, which is came in relatively recently, so in 2014, called parody, caricature, and pastiche. Now I know it's not. it sound, it sounds really kind of quite heavyweight, but what it's actually trying to do is to create an environment that recognizes that people will stand on the shoulders of the people that went before them, that it's not just about someone creates something and no one else can use it. There needs to be give and take and the very sort of fabric of how art works and being inspired by other art. There needs to be a recognition as well that we do need parameters whereby we can create work that is used as a sort of in a more satirical way, potentially critiquing what's existing. So that would be, I guess, one justification for the kind of fan art. So I think that's a sort of if you want the legal basis. But there's also another thing here, which is even if someone else's use or of another of a dimension from gaming is about sort of is going down the route of homage and doesn't quite sort of fulfill the criteria of the parody, caricature, and pastiche exception. Copyright, unlike trademarks and patents particularly, there is no requirement on the rights holder to enforce their rights.
mm,
They can
mm,
and they have that is their right to do that, but they're not compelled to do that. And so I think too that within the gaming industry, from our experiences so far, celebrating the fans celebrating someone else's work is part of the course. It may not quite fit within the exceptions to copyright, but I think it's as I understand it, it's part of the culture,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
Has that made,
community is a huge aspect. It's a
yeah,
huge important aspect of business in the
yeah.
games industry. So yeah, having an engaged community that might be keen on these pastiches
Well,
is kind of crucial to a lot of business plans, really. So
it
yeah.
is. It is. And I think that too, it's not unheard of whereby the law doesn't quite fit what goes on. And we see this, just talk about AI, when we're now having conversations about AI, but AI has been around for decades, right? The law is classically slow to catch up. In fact, the first copyright act in the UK, the Statute of Anne from 1609, was some hundreds of years after the invention of the printing presses. So copyright law does not move very quickly at all. So I think there are different aspects here. There's one which is, well, what is the legal framework? And then the other dimension is the culture.
Mm,
It's what happens, what's acceptable, what is the sort of the common language that's spoken in the gaming industry. As you said, this is part of the celebration and part of um, it's part of the shared language that you use. And so therefore, I mean, we refer to this, I suppose if you want a more technical term, we refer to this perhaps within through the lens of, risk management, you know, what what the sort of the balance between, on the one hand, what the law says, and on the other hand, sort of proportionate pragmatism. And that sounds like what's happening. And that happens all the
mm.
time with all the sorts of clients that we work with. But then there are those red lines, right? So for example, I guess that would be the same anyway. So for example, if someone who was paying homage to a game moved from that sort of homage pastiche into generating their own game that had the same characters and um, they were very successful commercially and the same elements, I suspect that would become a different matter. Is that a sort of a correct reading of this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think maybe it's worth us talking about modding at some point. I think that would be quite an interesting avenue to go down, perhaps, because obviously, permitting modding prolongs the shelf life of a product of your game, in the sense that it can, allow users to keep engaged with it on, both a sort of a visual level, a technical level, even a storytelling narrative level, sort of further down the line. So yeah, maybe it's worth us having another conversation about modding further in the
But
future,
but
perhaps, Naomi.
but I did notice here actually, Leo, it was really interesting because you used the word permitting modding. So
Mm,
so I read that as saying, well, um, you know, it's a license. It's a license to
mm,
modify. So you're actively saying, yes, you can do that,
mhm.
right? Is that correct? Like
Yeah,
and I think that, but that's fine. So, and we see this again with particularly within the work that we do in release of creative content under Creative Commons license, for example, which is absolutely modeled on open source software, right? Which came much, much earlier, whereby creators of stuff say, I want you to do these things. I'm permitting you, I'm giving you a license. You can do
mm,
all these things, but if you want to do any more than what I'm permitting you to do, you come back to me and ask me for my permission. So I think that absolutely that kind of iterative relationship that gaming companies can have with users through explicit permissions, it's a win-win for everyone. What we as a company try and do is encourage people to do that, say the things they want people to do, because it's when things aren't said, that's when there's ambiguity. If you're mute about it and you're not clear, and then someone does something with your stuff and you're not happy about it. Well, yes, the law's on your side, but on the other hand, I think it's about responsibility and saying, well, you need to establish that code of conduct, that best practice where you say, yes, that is right. That's what I want. I want you to create modifications of what I've done.
Yeah, thank you so much, Naomi. That's been really quite an interesting journey, all the way from the digital chickens to begin with. It is an awful lot to think about for games businesses and people working in the industry as well. Definitely. I should point out as well that we have a fantastic sort of training partnership with you. Do you want to sort of quickly talk through some of the things that you do on the training front, and I'll make sure there's a link at the bottom of
Thank you.
our video here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Leah. And I do have to say, thanks so much for kind of showcasing what we do with you. And we are really
Yeah,
excited
absolutely.
about, the partnership that we've got with you at Ukie. So um, we've we've been running training for decades and sort of trialing different ways of training. And we've got several different ways that we run our training courses. We've got our in-house training, where we go out to the depths of wherever I was. Well, it's not the depths of wherever, but I was up in Manchester yesterday running some face-to-face training for about 20 people and all PowerPoint free. And we had this great day sort of with games and activities, getting to grips with copyright. So that's kind of one thing that we do. But we also launched in August of last year our online training academy. So at the moment, we've got 23 courses across our course subject areas, copyright and data protection, applied to different circumstances. So you can start at the basics and then work your way through. We also, and I'm really pleased we did this, although at the time it was a lot of work. We got all our courses CPD UK accredited. So there was an external accreditation body that went through everything. And then that means that each course bears between 3 to 6 to 12 CPD points, which are fantastic for young professionals in the space to show that they've had really good accredited training. So we do courses on copyright basics and commissioning content. That's part of our intermediate courses there. Mainly sort of 3.5 hours live online with myself or one of my team. We've got a course on commercial licensing and we've got a course on copyright licensing. So course on exceptions to copyright. So you can just delve in really deep or you can just touch at the edges through one of our beginners courses. But what you might not know, Leo, is that we're working on a brand new course at the moment. I've got it actually on my desktop. We're just sort of finishing it off, which is copyright for creators. And so this course we have specifically built for people who create stuff. And so this is almost like your beginner's toolkit on kind of what are the key things you need to know when you're setting out. So we're looking at, basic, what is copyright? Um, how long does it last? What does it protect? Of course, weaving in, digital stuff, like digital chickens. We've also going to be covering things that we know that are worrying young creators, such as, what do they need to think about if they're being commissioned to create content, and how do they protect their rights and how do they enforce their rights? What are licenses? Those sorts of topics, just to get them going. So it's 3 hours of learning, and then there's kind of couple of breaks along the way, and we should have that course ready for the spring. So we'll let you know, and we can do some stuff around it. But yeah, that's our latest iteration of kind of training. And the other one that we've got plans is we'll be probably doing a half-day training course on AI and IP as well. We've got one on
Mhm.
AI and privacy rights, so that might be interesting for some of your members. But the AI and IP one we know is going to be important. We're holding off a bit because there's a government consultation going on right now, which closes really
Yes.
soon at the end of the month. We want to
Yeah.
wait for the outcomes of that consultation and then we'll put something together and then we'll have that ready probably by the summer. So a couple of things from our side to look forward to and hope be really relevant and useful for your members.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. And when those courses come through, we'll pop a shout out, and give you a mention. Well, Naomi, thank you so much for joining me today. I think there's an awful lot to consider there. Like I said from the outset, really, really interesting stuff, and clearly you have some incredible expertise in this area. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Leo. It's lovely to talk to you too. Thank you.
No worries, thank you. And I guess thank you to our audience who've tuned in to catch this video today. There's plenty of other need to know videos on there on our Ukie TV channel on YouTube. Thank you for enjoying this one, and more very soon. Thank you so much.